Don't be such a downer. Smile.
Weapon safety's disengaged. Commencing operation.
Who will come out ready?
Spencer!
Fight!
And welcome back.
And welcome back. It's been
Welcome back.
It's been a day. I can't believe it. I've just been sitting in this chair waiting to talk about our next topic.
Welcome back to Hit Confirm for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Today we're going to be talking aesthetics, from graphics to sound and the story mode. But first, the graphics and how this game looks.
You know, again, it's like I said.
Let's hear it.
Last episode, it's like I said. Almost every complaint about the game is still 100% justified. It does not look good at all. That being said, you really have to see it all in motion on while you're playing it, because a lot of the stuff, it's like, oh, faces look kind of weird and the UI is kind of boring. Well, once you're actually playing it, that stuff matters less and less because of how much is actually happening on screen. I think in terms of particle effects and stuff, I think those all look fine.
Those look better than ever.
And that's mostly what you're going to be looking at. A lot of the character faces have definitely been fixed or improved, Chun-Li being the standout example. Dante, for whatever reason, seems to be fixed on the character select, but not in-game or in story mode. There's a lot of weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
Inconsistencies, I would say, are the biggest problem for me personally, where character models will look completely different on each screen you see them on.
Yep, they do.
And certain characters like Spencer and Chris, I just don't think there's anything you can do besides completely redoing the head.
Well, Chris is just hideous. But I've seen the game files. I've seen the raw picture of him, and I don't know what it is. He looks kind of fine, because you see his eyes are look like eyes in the actual image, but in game on the character select, something's so wrong with his face.
So weird with his nose, I think. But other than that, characters like Ultron looks awesome. Thanos looks cool. Characters that aren't traditionally just sort of people all look really good. Nemesis looks cool. Mega Man, those characters look awesome.
I originally didn't have a problem with the body shapes of Captain America and Thor, but I'll talk about DLC later. But Captain America has a costume where he looks nothing like Captain America, and it's really jarring.
He looks like Thor.
Yeah, he looks a lot like Thor, even body shape. Thor without the cape, basically, is what his body shape looks like anyways. Yeah. So I had written down to mention the lack of colors, because there's only 4 colors per character.
Yeah, so anyway, moral of the story, don't buy Marvel. 4 colors only. Complete bullshit.
It's a small thing that adds up, and the colors don't look good, because the whole game doesn't really look good.
Yeah, the only time colors will look cool is, again, if it's kind of a character where you don't see too much of their face, or they're a different creature, or they're overly cartoony. Whereas Mega Man's colors look fine, Zero's colors look fine. Ultron, again, I keep bringing up Ultron because I think he probably looks the best out of anyone in the game.
I don't know, that platinum and gold alternating colors things looks really dumb on him.
Really? I like that color a lot.
It's so weird.
And I guess that's the point. It all comes down to personal preference. But some of these colors are objectively bad, and it's a shame when you only have 4. I don't get why in 2017 we still don't have color edit mode in every fighting game, but
so here's an idea I had, where how when they did it in Street Fighter 4, they had those colors that the ink shit completely changed that shading on them, basically.
I don't know where you're going with this, but I don't like it already.
Well, it's if I could talk about the DLC, it actually kind of shows it can work. Because those things completely change like the shading on those characters. I don't want them to look like Street Fighter 4, but you could do like the comic shading as an example.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I'll just mention it briefly. The way that the DLC costumes that were just released look, like in-game, show that it's the models themselves, and a lot of work can just be done with and textures. A lot of work can just improve them drastically if they altered the textures.
It's definitely a lot of texture issues, a lot of shaders are definitely a part of it. Colors tend to be not super vibrant, which, I mean, particle effects aside, again, not really what you want in your big, like, video game, comic book crossover spectacle fighting game. You kind of want everything to pop.
And like totally in like art direction, it's so confusing what they want, because it feels like they want the cinematic universe art style, but they aren't confident in it.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of half-assed, where Hulk, Arthur, Dante, Hagar especially, have really jarringly detailed skin and veins where they just should not have it.
Yeah.
Whereas Dante DLC costume does not have that.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. And probably the most jarring thing for me is when you take a character like Arthur and you put him next to Chris, and it's like there's like when everything.
If you put them on your home screen, or if you win with that team, it says a lot about the game.
It's like with the comic book shading, everything kind of had this weird, like, cartoony, otherworldly kind of feel to it, where it's like, okay, with the clashing, at least if, like, they look, like, anatomically completely different, at least the art style's consistent enough, where it's like, alright, I don't, you know, Arthur is fighting Thor, like, whatever, it's fine. In this game, it's just incredibly jarring when Arthur is talking to Thor, and I'm supposed to believe they're both human beings, when neither of them look like humans at all. And it's just major inconsistencies across the board, where it's like, as much as I think X-Zero and Sigma look really cool, they also look super weird compared to the rest of the cast, because they're just these, like, doll-like robo-men, which I guess is what they are, but they also aren't textured to be, like, super metallic. So the robot thing doesn't really come across. It's weird. It's just all these, there's no consistency at all.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is only an issue on the PC version is people have figured out pretty quickly, because it's a Unreal Engine 4 game, that you can just mod in motion blur, the stock motion blur that is in Unreal. And in Street Fighter V, on the PC version, I think it has chromatic aberration, but it also has motion blur, only on the PC version. Tekken 7 has, only on the PC version, chromatic aberration and motion blur. These two things look fucking disgusting. And the reason I try to turn them off, or it's a terrible idea in a fighting game, is it makes it really hard to read the characters' animations. It makes it super hard to, like, look and see what they're actually doing, which is kind of really important in a fighting game of all things. I remember seeing people doing Smash videos, doing tutorials for it, where they slowed the footage down, just slow motion, but they put in that thing that smooths it out.
Oh, that, yeah, I know what you're talking about, the frame smoothing.
Yeah, and it's a fighting game. You're looking at the animations and where they are, and when you make up frames like that, it makes it inaccurate. And it's kind of the same case for motion blur, but it's live. You can't see what your character's animation is because it's blurred. And it's like, you just don't want to deal with that. It makes it hard to read and hard to look at, is basically it. And it's there is a totally an intentional reason, and that is the exact reason it's not in Marvel Infinite, is because in Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5, you can kind of get away with it because the characters are so huge and close to the screen. Like, it's still like, you could still like put the motion blur in the character's silhouette and you can still tell it. In Marvel Infinite, characters are so small and there's 4 of them and there's so much other shit going on that motion blur just makes it a complete mess to anyone that wants to understand what's going on and not just look at something pretty.
Yeah, and it does look pretty. Just don't play with it. You're actively inhibiting yourself in being able to really comprehend everything that's happening on screen in a game where split-second reaction or sub-split-second reactions are required. You don't want to lose frames to like blending them together, and it's one of those things where it's like if somebody's like streaming with it or something, like it only really affects them. But just as a general this is general advice, we recommend you do not turn on that motion blur setting at all. And you have to kind of go out of your way for it too, right? It's like in the game's like actual like files, or is it on the like graphic settings?
It's just no, it's not in the graphic settings. It's completely just a configuration file. You just have to put a few lines of codes in and then save it.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
You're also able to adjust things like the bloom and add in lens flares and stuff. I mean, it wasn't designed with that, so it looks kind of weird to like make everything overexposed, which is what it does. And you're like, oh man, I want to balance out how it looks. I don't want it too overexposed. Well, then you play the game vanilla without the lighting. It was already perfectly fine, and you just overexposed it, and now trying to bring it back down.
Oh, one thing that's kind of weird, and it does have to do with the game's lighting, is for some reason it seems like all of the characters are like lit separately from the environment, and they're always lit from the front.
They are.
So it ends up looking, like really weird, and that can be one reason why the graphics can be kind of jarring, where it's like, I get why they did it, it's to help the characters stand out, but it also doesn't make sense when like lighting sources in the environment have no effect on your characters, besides maybe like a color tint, like slightly. But yeah, it's just a weird decision.
And you want like you can get like wanting your character to like stick out in a fighting game of all things, but like as this is actually segueing into the next thing I just thought about bringing up, but like Capcom knows what they're doing in terms of like 2D fighting game design, in terms of getting their characters to stick out without needing that. Because Street Fighter 5 is a great example. That whole game, every stage is fucking horrible like color grading, but background and foreground still distinguished.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think Capcom is the only one that's really nailed it, is 2.5D 3D model fighting games, where like Guilty Gear is 3D, but it's still animated, in that 2D like
the whole
style.
game is if it were still 2D.
Now take like Arika's fighting game, that's probably gonna look like that when it comes out eventually. The way you animate for a 2.5D fighting game, I think Capcoms are the only ones to like seriously nail it. Look at Fantasy Strike. Fantasy Strike's animations are so
I mean,
odd.
Indie games aside, look at Injustice 2. That game's animations are jerky and janky as fuck.
No, yeah, NetherRealm games have terrible animations.
There's not good.
They're I know there's a dude's done a very analytical video on the animations of NetherRealm games that goes into specifically what those issues are. So I'll try to like refer that in the description.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting watch, but I would agree. Capcom definitely, just in terms of how things animate in a 2.5D fighting game, they're definitely probably one of the best, if not the best. And I can say, while like models don't look super great in this game, everything animates like really fluidly, and it looks pretty good. We're really fast, jerky attacks kind of have this sense of motion to them. That doesn't feel weird or out of place. There's definitely probably a move or two in there that still kind of look weird. Oh, Ghost Rider's level 3 for sure. Penance Stare now no longer zooms into his eyes; it just kind of sits on his face. There's like weird changes like that, and then there's also issues where like for certain hyper combos, if it's a cinematic that's high up and it's looking at the ground, you can like see where the floor like cuts into the effect. As like the floor just kind of extends into the background, you see like the stage it brings you to during those animations. But other than that, no, at least animation wise, everything's pretty fluid. One thing I do want to kind of pepper in while we're talking about graphics is UI. While the UI is like bland, that's definitely not the biggest problem with the game, even though it is kind of disappointing. The character select lags like really bad, and it's just PNGs, so I don't know why it lags.
The entire like UI and main menu, you could like to make that out of a PowerPoint, basically, where it's like kind of cute actually that they have like choose a stage image as your background and then 2 character renders. But I'm gonna add this in, even though it's pointless. Those character renders on like the main menu are actual 3D models. Those aren't images.
Yeah,
it's really funny, but yeah, it's that simple.
And I like that. That at least I like, because you can kind of personalize it. It's like I kind of wish there was like a default general like main menu screen, kind of like Ultimate Marvel 3 had, because it was really cool with like the way the pages turned and stuff.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of like, this is my team, this is my favorite stage, this is my console. The only problem is a lot of those 3D models, they don't look good.
Yeah.
Unless you play X and Sigma like I do, in which case it just looks fine, I guess. But you can definitely tell they're 3D. You can kind of see like the seams on the edges of where the model kind of like stops.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's the thing that really fools you is like that different lighting on them, because the lighting on the main menus is always consistent and it never changes with the background.
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Unless you break the 3D render going on there.
Well, in that case, the other main problem again is that the UI is just it's unimaginative, and I definitely believe to some degree that the UI in a fighting game should always be function over form, but I definitely don't think it should ever be function without form. Where health bars, your meter, your stone gauge, everything is super easy to just quickly glance over and see. All the information is like readily like present to you. But every other fighting game has shown that you can have that effect while still making your UI look cool and interesting.
Past Marvel games have.
Yeah, even
for
past
the most
Marvel
part.
games. But I would take it even a step further. I would say the best UI I've ever seen in a fighting game is the Persona fighting games, without a doubt. Super cool. All the information's right there.
I was gonna say though that even without like the precedent that Marvel set, like the design UI of Marvel 3 is crazy, but we live in a world with Persona 5, and that is exponentially raised the bar in terms of design. Like if you have like a basic fade to black and then fade back in transition in your game, what are you doing?
Dude, Persona 5 Arena, little off topic, is gonna have by far it's gonna be the coolest game ever made. Especially if the Guilty Gear team does it. If the BlazBlue team does it, it's still gonna be awesome. But goddamn, it's just, it's like, I know what they could do, and the fact that they just went with like bars and it's like super simplistic, it undersells like the whole experience. And an example of a UI that's like super simplistic, where it's just kind of very simple white lines and bars and everything, but still manages to be more interesting, is Under Night.
yeah.
in birth, exe, late, est, whatever version you're playing, where it's like it's very simple, but even transitions between like before the match starts and then you have your character cut-ins and like long paragraphs about your characters you'll never be able to read. Like even in its simplicity, there is a style to it. Like Under Night is minimalist, whereas Marvel just feels lazy. Like it's just one step above a mobile game UI, which I know that comparison has definitely been made before.
It's true though.
But it is true. It still holds true for sure.
Like I think I would have imagined like it's not Krobie Cat's thing, fighting games, but like you can straight up compare, like bring all of the X-Men fighting games to the Versus series, you know, like go through all of their character selects. Like it's not even about like roster size when you look at them, it's about the aesthetic and art direction of all those games, and then it ends at Infinite. It's just what happened after all that.
And the biggest, like, for me, the biggest atrocity you can commit on your character select is asymmetry. And
and we have that now.
It's not just we have that now. If the DLC is anything to go by, if what they've said is true, then even after this season is done, it will still not be symmetrical. And I don't even know how they would make it work. Because we're only getting 2 Capcom characters and 4 Marvel characters. Again, look forward to the DLC video. But it's mind-boggling that you wouldn't just like start rearranging it, or maybe just not have it be a blue rectangle and a red rectangle, like something, anything.
I would hope like something changes it up by then. Otherwise, it's either like, Black Widow's gonna be like on the Capcom side, but still have her color side.
Do you know what I honestly think is gonna happen? I think it's gonna stay where it's Sigma and Monster Hunter, and then there's a gap, and then it's the 3 DLC Marvel characters, and then 1 Marvel character is just gonna be added to the top right, and it's gonna be left like that for months.
They're gonna start going to the left and right sides.
Yeah.
Just one stack on.
It's like if they didn't do the imbalance like release between Marvel and Capcom, like the layout was there to add all the characters you want and still have it be symmetrical, and they just didn't do it. And it's like I had this kind of same annoyance with Street Fighter V for the longest time, although albeit a bit different, where the character select, they wouldn't just add another row of characters. They would just keep making the character select longer and thinner. And it's
they're
like
fixing that.
And they're fixing it, and that's the thing, is like, graphically, especially given the game's sales, which I think is probably going to be one of the last things we talk about, I'm already looking forward to the idea of a re-release of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, just because they might try anything.
Yeah. like that's how it's, and it's like the 10, 20 plus years later, I really thought we were getting away from Capcom re-releasing games, and it's all for different reasons now.
Yeah.
But like that's how it is. Their games just get better with re-releases.
Yeah, it's like you needed 4 versions of Street Fighter 2 because the only way you could add things to that game was to release it again, or have somebody come and go into the arcade board and update it for you. Whereas, like, now, it's just laziness. It's just like, we just didn't do this before. And it's like, oh, well, now we'll get around to it, you know, after everyone's already bought all this fucking DLC so we can keep our doors open, even though we would have sold more copies to begin with if we just tried in the first place.
And it's a relief for Street Fighter V that, like, it's a free update for us. Essentially, it's just, I assume, $40 for all of the past characters anyways. So it's great for everyone to catch up, but it's not going to be that way for Infinite.
I think
30?
30 for Arcade Edition, yeah. You get Street Fighter 5 and the 2 DLC passes.
No, yeah, that's great. Specifically because it's free to us. It'd be shitty if it wasn't free to us.
Which anyone who didn't think that was going to happen was just blind, because there's no way. It's like How is somebody 2 years down the line gonna buy Street Fighter V? And it's like, okay, you just bought the game for like $30 or however much it was. Now you need to spend $30 for each pack of 6 characters. And now we're on Season 4. So that's now $120 on top of your original $30 purchase. There's no way. They had to do this, and it's fine. I have no problem with it at all. I get why it needed to be done. I kind of wish that this arcade edition package was what we got to begin with, as everyone else does. But at this point, you know, what can we really do? If you like the game enough, you'll keep playing it. If you don't, then this probably won't sway you. Unless you waited. In which case, you were a genius. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah, you saved a lot of money, and now is the perfect time to jump in.
Yep. And Marvel will most likely end up being the same way. We're a year or two down the line, graphics and everything. I feel like we're jumping super far.
Well, let's bring it back. Street Fighter V is a service. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite works how their past games have and is not a service.
Yeah, it's a game.
So we're fucked when they do that. Now, is there anything else we need to touch on before we hit the music?
No. Everything that can be said about graphics has already been said.
That's true, yeah.
So, there's not much I can really add.
So, and then music selection.
Yo, what the fuck? It's the worst. It's probably one of the worst soundtracks I've ever heard in a fighting game, other than NetherRealm games, and that's because the NetherRealm games are, like, atmospheric. There's, like, barely music in those games. The Marvel side is 100% just like the forgettable shit you'd hear in the movies, and the Capcom side is the same fucking, like, it's Ryu's theme, but it's synth.
It's the melody. It's someone took a melody, put it through something, and then just put a drum and bass synth over it.
Oh my god, it's
every single song.
It's like the only songs I thought were like, I think Jetta's theme is alright. And Sigma's theme is alright, but it kind of just sounds like it originally did. Yeah, Arthur's theme is good because it's different than all the other themes.
Yeah.
But, like, there's no variety, and, like, if you want to stay with a certain theme, that's fine. That's what Marvel 3 did. It went all, like, kind of the synth and all that, but like, when the Capcom side is all synth, and then the Marvel side is all just generic orchestral music.
Especially with how they had themes established already for most of those characters.
Yeah.
And those themes were still iconic themselves.
Oh yeah, no, the Marvel side I always thought had the cooler themes in the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and they're gone.
Yeah.
They're just gone. And I think Capcom has gone on record saying that they are interested in bringing, like, quote-unquote song packs to the game. But fuck you. That should just be there. Or it should be free.
Us on PC have mods, and we can mod in music, but we'll get into why that's not necessarily a solution later. At the very end of this saga.
The big Marvel versus consistency saga, where nothing in this game fucking lines up. Again, I like the game. I like it a lot. It's my main fighting game right now. But it's got so many problems. The music being one of the big ones where it's like, I don't notice it most of the time except when I use a stone with Ultron, because I hate Ultron's theme so much. And right when it starts playing, I get upset, and then I lose matches because of how upset I am.
I think him or Iron Man are like the default player 2 character.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is their themes are terrible to hear on repeat.
Oh yeah, Iron Man's theme is the most droning, like, this is a superhero song. Iron Man saves people. Like,
what you do when you go into training is, unfortunately, Arthur's shorter, so it's kind of hard to do it with him, but you choose your player 2 or your first player 2 character to be who you want to listen to the theme of.
Yeah.
And then make sure the characters you're playing have fine themes, because you're going to be hearing them for a while.
Music, again, if they release song packs at this point, it better be free. Because, like, this is ridiculous. I can't think of, like, a single song in the game I, like, really like.
What about a language pack?
What about, like, a new voice? Like, what about, like, we hired new voice actors for everybody pack.
I mean, like, some of them don't like, some of the voice actors don't stick out as much, but some of them, namely Spencer.
Like Ryu is Ryu. Dante is the guy. It's Dante.
Yeah.
Spencer sucks. Chris sucks. Gamora is possibly the most offensive. Everyone just seems bored.
That's a good way to put it.
It's like, I'm the guy who does the Robert Downey Jr. impression. Unibeam.
Yeah. The, you know, with Spencer's voice line on the character select?
What is it again?
Oh, it was, shit, what was it? It was so iconic.
I know
Damn
it was
it,
dumb.
It was so
believe it
dumb,
was
but they
stupid.
changed it. They took it out.
Oh, that's funny.
So he says other lines now. Yeah, I totally forget what his battle cry was, but he doesn't say it anymore.
And of course, like, it's Marvel, so it's an anime game. So everyone's gonna be saying their move names a whole lot. And if all of them are just either boring or grating, it's like, how many times are you really gonna listen to Chris say Reality Stone?
Yeah.
Especially when people are spamming it. That's why that fucking Spider-Man joke exists. This is
Yeah.
Web Ball, Reality Stone, Web Ball, Reality Stone. And they didn't even like, all right, try saying Reality Stone like 3 different ways and we'll switch between them. No, it's like, it's the same way every time.
Yeah.
I have to, although, okay, there are some standouts in this voice cast that I think do a really good job. I think whoever did Jeddah was having the time of their life. Good on whoever did Jeddah. I think the dude who's playing Nova tried as hard as they fucking could, and I love Nova's voice. He's just constantly yelling at the top of his lungs. Ultron sounds exactly how he should, and I feel like Sigma sounds exactly like he should.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, Black Panther, he's just like a guy with an accent, I guess. And that's it, that's as far as they go.
I never liked X being like a kid, like a really young kid, as he was in all of his games, except for the, what was it? X6 was a 2D one. X7 and X8. And Command Mission, he had that voice. He had a much older voice. I forget who the voice actor was, but like, I thought that voice was kind of fine. It was ridiculously anime, but it worked for X. And this voice is still like kind of an in-between. The child and that one.
Yeah.
It's all right, but more on the mediocre side.
Yeah, and like, I wish they would just go full anime. Just do it. My favorite characters in all of video games all are fighting game characters, and they all have big stupid voices. Terry Bogard is barely a human being, and he's amazing for it.
Or a Japanese voice option, but they didn't record any Japanese voices.
Nope.
Or other languages at all. Anywhere.
That's because Japan clearly doesn't give a shit about this game. More on that again later. It's a lot of illusion in these videos.
Target destroyed. Returning to base.